If you've ever been on Yellow Jackets TikTok or you've been on the Hunger Games TikTok, or perhaps you've seen a video of someone lip syncing to that one song with from Fleetwood Mac, Silver Springs, and the live version where uh Stevie Nicks dead stares into her ex-husband Lindsey Buckingham's face as she makes her him sing backup on a song about their messy breakup. And if you've seen those videos, you've probably seen some like reference to haunting the narrative, um, which is a term that has a really messy meaning, a really messy history, and has some actual basis in literary criticism. Let's get into it. This is Casey in the Joint. I'm your host, Casey, and I have broken into my university's podcast studio to bring you this irregular scheduled video essay, think piece, freeform like audio. It doesn't matter. Um, did that sound cool? Probably not. Um, so really quick background on where this term came from. I was looking up where this term possibly originated from, trying to like figure out where for this, because originally this was a whole other thing. Um, and I couldn't find anything outside of like TikTok or like maybe Reddit. Um, and there's a couple Tumblr posts. That's about it for the actual term haunting narrative. I looked up on TV tropes to see if there's an actual like page for it because when people talk about it, they refer to it as a trope. And I still couldn't find anything. The closest I could find was the entry for posthumous character, which is dead character that we only see in flashbacks and archive footage. Um, and that's sort of applicable to what we're talking about, but not all characters that haunt the narrative are dead. Some of them are missing, some of them are just not there. Like they're not present in the story proper. So for an actual definition that we can use going forward, we're going to use the a character that is absent from your main story. We don't see them outside of prequels at like the most, and that's like the most we'll ever see them. Or we don't see them outside of flashbacks told by another person, or like just small flashbacks. Um, or what was the other one? Or we just don't see them. Like, what was I talking about? I'm sorry. I'm not an eloquent person. Um, but so they're not present in the story proper. We just know about their existence. Their absence in the story permeates every aspect of the story pretty much. The easiest way that I've seen people do this, the cleanest way anyway, is that you have your character be dead or missing from the start of the story, and the like story itself is kind of following that person's, or it's following your main characters as they try to uncover um, what happened to the person that or whatever. You can probably think of whole bunch of examples, or it's your character is dead from this beginning, and like they're like a bunch of characters' motivations are surrounding that character's death. Um, but so I was trying to find where this term came from, and seeing only results from social media and like Reddit forums. I was like confused. I was trying to figure out like people treat this like it's an actual like literary like term. And so I emailed one of my writing professors who knows a lot more about like literature than I do. Um, she's very well read and she's a nice lady. And even though it's summer, I figured, hey, why not give it a shot? And she actually did get back to me. So she had told me that it is something she's heard of. But the actual like literary theory term for this is hauntology, like portmanteau of haunt and ontology. So it's like kind of like this idea that the past is always going to be impacting the present. And even if like you don't know about the past or you don't see the past, they can kind of linger as ghosts or presences in your story. A lot of this comes down to a lot of philosophy. It's a lot of like stuff that isn't really important for this video. But it is an actual literary theory term. So I was like, oh, interesting. So, and she had heard of the term haunting the narrative, which still isn't like in like I still can't find any mention of it, even after searching with stuff with hauntology. But she had heard of it, and the example she gave me was not about a character, but more so about like events in the past before the story starts, which is also applicable, but people don't talk about that because it's not as interesting as characters to like fandom people and stuff. Um, you can't really latch on to an event and like identify, or you can identify with an event, but you can't like make fan art or like fan fiction, I guess, of an event as if it were a character. Um, which is I which is possibly why people refer to characters doing this. But she gave me an example that was like a woman driving in her car and they're like driving along or whatever, and there's like this one intersection that they really don't like going through. And it's like they have a lot of anxiety around driving, they have a lot of anxiety around like I guess I think it was like Ubers and stuff. And like as the story goes on, eventually you realize that the person that's terrified of driving had gotten into a really bad accident at this one like pedestrian area, and that's why everything about the story is the way it is. So that's kind of like that's the example she gave me. It's about an event, not a character, but it still kind of applies to what we're talking about. So I wanted to be like, oh, what's this like literary theory versus what people call a trope? So, like I said, I could only find posthumous character on TV tropes. Um, and kind of the literary theory hauntology that my writing professor sent me. Um, and so I think that's kind of just like people took this theory that someone may have heard of once. And we originally saw this term pop up. I want to say uh, I want to say like the winter of 2023 after the movie adaptation of The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes uh, by or that Hunger Games prequel came out. Um, and Lucy Gray, played by Rachel Zegler, kind of got a lot of attention because she sings and she's very pretty and she's kind of just a fun energy in the movie. And her story kind of really resonated with people because it's this character that we have not seen before. Um, and we get to see all this stuff about like how the songs that we hear in the Hunger Games came about and why the games are the way they are and like why like we get the version of this doesn't really do it, but the book does. You get to see Snow's inner monologue and realize what like a monster he is. Like he's really fucked up. And he like says some really fucked up shit in this book or whatever, and we don't really get that in the movie because the movie's told from a third person perspective, which is really hard to do inner monologue for because you can't just have a character narrating over things. And if you like, you watch Tom Blythe's performance and you can sort of see some like of this inner monologue shit in his head, but you don't really, you don't hear it. And honestly, a lot of people didn't really pick up on a lot of stuff because it's not said out loud. A lot of Snow's actions are really cunning, and he's really, really good at like performing. He's really good at like putting on a mask and not being like the crazy person he is inside. He's really paranoid. He's really like manipulative. He's really like aware of how people are perceiving things. And so he's always on like the defense, which, yeah, you don't really get that in a performance because if your character just has a mask on and is not really, like really letting it slip, then yeah, that's like Tom Blythe does a really good performance as Snow in that movie, but it's kind of just coupled with everything else that you can't translate from the book. I don't think like that you could translate the Battle of Songbirds and Snakes from movie to book that easily. Um, and that's not like even a hot take. A lot of people say that. So to get into an examples, actually, we're gonna do a quick cut. We're gonna use this whiteboard. Um, this side, yes. This side, no. My camera's flipped. I don't have a good camera, so I have to just like use this weird way of doing it. I do apologize for the weird flip of the camera, but you get the point, I think, right? Yes. Okay, that is the one closest to me. That doesn't matter too much. But okay, so we're gonna go through examples. This is kind of the easiest way to make my point. All right. So first round of this little example thing. First one up is we have Rebecca from the Daphne du Maurier novel of the same name and the Alfred Hitchcock movie. Rebecca de Winter is the deceased wife of Maxim de Winter, and in the movie, the new wife is portrayed by Joan Fontaine, and she does not have a name besides Mrs. de Winter. She's never given a name, which kind of makes sense for the story that they're trying to tell. Um, Everything about like these like the new wife and Maxim de Winter's marriage is tainted by Rebecca and her lingering presence in the house. The like maid, Mrs. Danaway, who was like the personal assistant to Rebecca, is constantly like reminding and belittling and like beating down um, the new wife, played by Joan Fontaine. And everything in like this house is like a living memorial. Like Rebecca's bedroom, which is separate from like the main like her husband's bedroom, is like completely untouched. Like the new wife is not allowed to stay in there. It's just like basically a like living shrine, and um, the movie just is pretty like everything about like the new marriage, she can't live up to Rebecca. She like won't be the same as Rebecca. She can't replace her. And Mrs. Danaway is like getting in her head, being like, "You're not good enough. Why don't you just kill yourself?" I think is like something she does say. But so and yeah, so everything about their like relationship is just tainted, and yeah. So, and then on the other hand, for the no side, we have Monica from Shameless, kind of a similar vein. Um, so Monica, I do like the person who said this. This isn't one that I have seen a lot of people say, but it is like I do want to talk about it because it is kind of an interesting point. Um, if you remember, we said like events in the past can haunt narratives. I would say Monica's original departure from the Gallagher household it does haunt the narrative. In the first season, she doesn't show up until like I think the finale or a couple episodes before, and it's mentioned a couple times that she walked out on them, and that she's kind of abandoned her family. And then when she shows up, it's this whole big fight. You get that iconic like performance from Emmy Rossum as Fiona Gallagher of "You Are My Mother Too." Um, but Monica herself. So when we like talk about the like definition of haunting the narrative of the person's absence, being like a key, like being a key part of the narrative, that like I can see why you would say that because Monica's absence from the Gallagher household like is such a plot point. A huge thing about Shameless is like generational trauma and like the lasting impacts of this family's history with everything. Um, but yeah, but like the reason why she doesn't fit, Monica shows up at the ending of season one at some points. She's, I believe, present for maybe the second half of season two. Um, and then she shows up, I think, a couple more times in between seasons two and eight. And then season eight is when Monica dies. She shows up for the final time at the Gallagher household, has a huge party. And she's trying to like make things right with everyone. And we don't know it until like it happens. But the reason why is because I think she knew her time was coming. Her struggles with addiction, her struggles with mental health, her struggles with everything has finally caught up to her. And I believe she dies of a brain aneurysm after this party that they have when they take a lot of drugs. Um, but yeah, that's why Monica's in the no in the no section is because she does not haunt this narrative act like she her absence definitely does. Her original departure definitely does. But because she shows up so many times throughout the series, she like if she was never shown, If we never met her in person, except for like maybe the finale or something of the show itself, then I would say, yeah, she would belong in the yes pile. But because like the show is the way it is, and it's over now, there's no way to do that. But so that's why she's in the no pile. And then okay, the next set that we're gonna do, or sort of set actually, we're gonna do Laura Palmer first, the blueprint of pretty much every story like this. And then we'll do Amy Dunn. Um, which is one that I surprisingly see a lot of people say, even though it doesn't make sense. Um, so Laura Palmer, a big theme about Twin Peaks is like facades and seedy underbellies. The town of Twin Peaks itself has a lot of shit going on with it. We get we have all the like there's like a lot of adultery going on, a lot of like tangled webs of relationships. Um, and then Laura Palmer, who everyone in town thinks is like this perfect person. She's homecoming queen. She's really popular in school. She does Meals on Wheels. She's like dating the high school football star, um, Bobby Briggs, and she's friends with like a lot of other people. I think she does some clubs and stuff, but I don't remember. We find out after Dale Cooper shows up in Twin Peaks as they're doing the investigation of Laura Palmer's murder after her body washes up on shore. Um, we see that Laura was not as perfect as everyone says. This entire, like the first, I want to say, season and a half or so of Twin Peaks is about figuring out what happened to Laura Palmer. She is the story. Her death and everything about it is like the main part of it, and we see like the CD, we like uncover her drug addiction. We uncover her relationships with Donna Hayward, her best friend, her secret boyfriend James, played James Hurley, the son of the mechanic in town. We discover her sex work as she is a prostitute sort of at this like brothel across the border, One Eye Jack's, which kind of doubles as a casino, and is headed by like the Madame or whatever. Like I think her name was like Madame Black, and we figure out that Ben Horn, the hotel owner, was sleeping with Laura, um, and then let's see what else happens? And then we find out eventually that Leland Palmer, Laura's dad, is the like was her killer. And we find out that he has been sexually abusing her since childhood. And we know about this from her diary, as she mentions the name Bob. Bob is the guy that has been Bob has been possessing Leland every time this happens, um, and making him do all this crazy shit. Bob is played by this guy with like stringy hair, creepy smile. The actor himself is like actually really nice, but that doesn't matter. Um, Laura's dad, Leland, though, um, we find out, I believe, at the start of season two, after Leland's hair goes white, that Bob is someone he knew from his childhood at like this lake house that his parents owned, and he was like a neighbor or something. So a lot of people, including myself, have taken this to mean that Leland himself was sexually abused by this guy Bob, and that's partially why like the spirit of Bob possesses him every time he sexually abuses Laura. And we get a little bit of this in like the series proper of like, oh, maybe Bob is just the evil that men do, which, yeah, Bob is kind of a metaphor in the original Twin Peaks. And not so much the return, but sort of. And then we get to Fire Walk with Me. We see Laura's last days alive, like at the last week or so. And we figure, like, we see all like the drugs, we see all like her like distress, her anguish. We see her like struggling with her family. Like we see her interactions with Leland. We see her find out in real time that Leland and Bob are the same person, or like because he goes home during the day and he's look or she goes home during the day. She knows someone's in the house. She doesn't know who yet. But she goes up to her room. She sees Bob trying to steal her diary, which is how Laura's story started in Fire Walk with Me, was that she was like thinking that someone was stealing her diary and like taking pages out of it and everything and ripping them. And so she hides the diary at one of like her Meals on Wheels stops. And then so she goes home, she sees Bob trying to like mess around in her room, like looking where her diary was hidden the first time. And she runs out of the house in like a panic. She runs down wherever far, and then she hides in some bushes. And then she sees her dad walk out of the house, and like you see her break down, and it's heartbreaking. And then um yeah, and then you see like Bob coming through the window one night, and she like knows it's like who's there, and then we see her like realize that it's her father, or she's like the facade of Bob breaks down, and it's her father, and it's terrifying, it's scary, it's sad, and then we see her die as she like doesn't let the spirit of Bob overtake her as it's been trying to the whole time, and we see her like give herself up so she doesn't have to be like become bad or whatever. And it's this whole thing is like, oh, Laura's not actually bad. Laura's a good person. She's just had some wrong like shit go bad in her life, and that's like why. And then in the return, Laura is mentioned to be like the one. She's shown to be the force of good to counteract Bob and Judy, who people believe is possessing Laura Palmer or Sarah Palmer, Laura Palmer's mom, even though there's not a lot of like in story confirmation for that. It's just like a really popular theory. Because Sarah Palmer acts fucking weird in The Return, and there's really no other explanation. Um, but so yeah, so this whole like the themes of Twin Peaks about facades and everything breaking down, kind of like the seedy underbelly and everything. Laura Palmer is kind of the person that we're like experiencing all of this through. She is like the vector of Dale Cooper to uncover all this town's secret mysteries and everything that's going on, and all like adultery, all the drug trafficking, all of like the weird shady shit that's going down. Um, and so yeah, so that's why Laura Palm, like forgot to mention this when we talk about definitions. Um, but like we're looking at themes and stuff because the best ones that do this are the ones that build onto the themes of the work we're talking about. Um, which is why it's easier for your character to be the central focus from the start instead of like coming in later or something like that. Um, but you can make it work. It's happened before, as we'll talk about next after we're done talking about Miss Amy Dunn. So Amy Dunn, the sort of second protagonist of Gone Girl, um, I can like people say this because she like goes missing on purpose, and like the first half or so of the movie Gone Girl is we're watching Nick Dunn, played by Ben Affleck, as he tries to uncover what happened to his wife, and like there's all these different clues and everything. He finds out about all this shit that she did, and um, and then the second half of Gone Girl is we see Rosamund Pike playing Amy Dunn, and her whole like, oh, here's how I did this. Here's how I set up the fake crime scene. Here's how I like got all my neighbors and shit to like say these certain things. She's a psychopath, I think, is what like people like the actual diagnosis or something. But like she's really extreme, like she's extremely like well thought out and everything. And this is like another one I can see why people say this. I'm probably gonna be saying that a little bit. But I can see why people would say like she haunts the narrative from the beginning. If you only watch like the first half, I remember hearing somewhere that the book Gone Girl, we never actually see what happened to Amy as like we do in the movie, but that's not true. I looked it up. Um, Plots like pretty similar. But so yeah, Amy can't haunt the narrative because she's the second protagonist. We hear things from her perspective. We hear her monologues. We like see her diaries and everything. And like in the first half or so, yeah, she is definitely like haunting that man. But characters are not specific narratives. They are definitely part of it. They're like the best way to deliver your narratives. But a singular character or characters um, cannot like you. That's not how haunting the narrative works. You know, that's not how like this whole like idea of haunting works. So yeah, that's Amy Dunn. That's pretty cut and dry. It's like you can't have haunted narrative when you're a main character. Okay. The next two are from the same franchise. We're doing Lucy Gray Baird from The Battle of the Songbirds and Snakes, the Hunger Games prequel, and then Brew from the original Hunger Games book. Um, so the Hunger Games is a specific case where big theme is like the past is impacting the present. Um, we have this idea of like propaganda and art and everything, and like lasting legacies is a constant theme in the Hunger Games. So Lucy Gray is an interesting case where I mentioned like you can't have a character haunting the narrative, or you can where we meet them later on, but we didn't know about their presence beforehand, and it's like not as easy to do it that way because you have to be really careful. And Suzanne Collins managed to do it. We knew about Lucy Gray from the we didn't know her name, but we did know about her existence. In the first Hunger Games book, there is an indirect mention by Katniss about a second Victor from District 12 that no one really knows anything about. She doesn't know anything about it worth mentioning. Katniss is like that a lot, which she's a traumatized teenager. I like it's understandable that she doesn't want to talk about something that she doesn't deem like decent enough. Um, she's like a limited POV narrator. But we do know about her existence. And Suzanne Collins has stated in interviews that she had an idea in her head for Lucy Gray, um, but her like identity has kind of changed over the years. But so knowing about Lucy Gray from the first book, just not her name or anything, and then we get to Mockingjay, where Katniss starts singing "The Hanging Tree," which is a song written by Lucy Gray, in the Battle of Songbirds and Snakes about Arlo Chance, the guy that like gets hung or whatever, in the town square, and like her relationship with Snow, and they're like, meet here, we're dipping, we're leaving now. Um, and I think that's like the Cubbies plot in that book, or like towards the end is with Sejanus and the mayor's daughter who is dating one of the Cubby members, and they're like, "We're leaving District 12. We figured out a way out or whatever." And then Snow betrays Sejanus by like tricking him into talking about it with Jabberjay's present, and he records him and sends the like tape to the Capitol. And so, and then Lucy Gray also like sings other songs. The Meadow song from the first book, where Rue dies and Katniss sings her lullaby, written by Lucy Gray, or at least like written by the Cubby, I think. Um, a couple other songs, and then the reason why the Hunger Games are the way we are as we know them in the original trilogy is a direct result of Lucy Gray, because the challenge in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is to make the Hunger Games worth watching. It's like that's the job of the mentors as students. Their job is to make these people worth watching. And so Snow gets Lucy Gray as his tribute, and she sings us one of her songs. It's like to you, nothing you can take from me. At the reaping, catches everyone's at cap like in the Capitol's attention, and then she's wearing her colorful dress. Everyone's like in love with her. Everyone likes her. She's a very likable person. She's a performer. And so during her interview where she sings her ballad that she wrote for herself, um, she gets like a lot of donations and everything because people feel bad for her. People want like people root for her to win. And that's part of like that was like yeah part of the challenge is to get these like the capital citizens interested in the Hunger Games so they could go on, because people like viewership is dwindling. No one wants to watch this because it's the same thing every year. um, and like the original idea for the Hunger Games, as we find out, was not to be like this huge spectacle. It was just to be like um it was supposed to be just like penance for the districts or whatever. And then like they started recording like every year it was recorded or whatever, but like it's the same thing. They get dumped in this arena, this like old amphitheater thing, and they get like all the weapons or whatever, and then they just kill each other. And it gets, of course, it gets boring after a while. Of course it would. And so because of Lucy Gray, the Capitol is suddenly interested. And so they need to recreate this every year. And they do, and they get better arenas and everything. And and Dr. Gall, the person who is the one who like set up this assignment to like make the games worth watching. Um, Without her, because she's fucking crazy. She's a psycho. She's bloodthirsty. She used to be an OBGYN before she became like a children's slaughterer, which is crazy to think about. Um, but So the games probably would have ended after like the 10th game, or they would have been on the downward slope and they probably would have stopped eventually. They would not have lasted 75 years. But because of Lucy Gray and like getting the Capitol's attention and making like this whole mentorship program, making the whole like sponsorship program and everything, um, basically just made it worth it. So that's like a big theme in the Hunger Games is like propaganda. How does Lucy Gray fit into that? Because Lucy Gray, she's the one who made the games worth watching and everything. Her songs literally go on to influence like political propaganda for District 13 in Mockingjay. Um, and like another Hunger Games character that kind of fits this, but more so on like a more personal level, is Burdock Everdeen, Katniss's father, who dies in the mines in the first book. And he's the reason why Katniss can hunt as well. He's the reason why she does so well in the games, and like we see in her Tracker Jacket hallucination in the movie, we see his death and like the mine explosion, and we see like how her mom kind of froze up and how like Prim and Katniss and Astrid, this whole like family unit just get like completely destabilizes. Um, which I know it's like kind of bad to think this, but Sunrise on the Reaping, spoilers by the way. Astrid is Katniss's mom. We meet her sort of barely in Haymitch's book that just came out recently. Um, and towards the end, Burdock and Haymitch are having this little, like, not really a fight. Haymitch is worried that if he gets too close to Burdock, then the Capitol will try to kill him. Because we've been watching as the Capitol killed off Haymitch's family, his brother and his mother, and his girlfriend, Lenore Dove, another cubby girl, similar to Lucy Gray, but like she's more rebellious than Lucy Gray. And so he thinks that if like like Burdock gets too close, Capital's just going to off him, which they eventually do, but not in this book. And so Astrid and Burdock come over one day. Hamish is chasing them away, and he throws a rock and hits Astrid in the head. And like it's kind of a bad thought to have, but I'm like maybe Astrid's traumatized state where she's catatonic partially influenced by the fact that Hamish just straight up threw a brick in her face and like it actually hit and it's stated to have hurt pretty bad. Um, but yeah, anyway, off track. But so Lucy Gray, yeah, she's kind of like we see her influence permeate throughout the book, throughout like the other prequel, Sunrise on the Reaping, and the original trilogy. She's partially the reason why Hamish uses poison because she used poison in the games. Hamish gave her poison, rat poison, in like a little compact to put into water so she could trick the tributes into drinking it and dying. Um, and yeah, and so Lucy Gray is named after this one ballad from I think Appalachia, and in the story itself of that ballad, the girl Lucy Gray, like the little girl, ends up going missing in the woods. No one knows if she's alive or dead, because she's like, I guess, good enough at wood stuff that she could be alive. And people mention seeing her like in the like corners of their eyes and whatever. And yeah, that's kind of the whole like influence that Lucy Gray has on Snow. Uh, like Snow sees her constantly. it is mentioned that Dr. Gall has destroyed every copy of the 10th Hunger Games except for one that she keeps for herself, and which is presumably where he gets the footage to show Haymitch in the new prequel book. Um, and then, um, yeah, so we get that happen, and then Uh, but he's constantly seeing her out of the corner of his eyes, likely. He's extremely paranoid, which we see in like the original book. He started out really fucking paranoid and like really fucking insane. In the book, you get his inner monologue. You don't really get it in the movie, but yeah. So you get it in the like in the book of him being like, I need to put up this mask of like this respectability and like the Snow family name has like a lot of importance. So I can't be hungry. I can't be like desperate. I can't be like whatever. Uh, I can't like look weak. And so he's really like he's already really paranoid. And then when Lucy Gray and him are like in the woods, um, and like by this lake that they're staying at. Um, he mentions that he's killed three people, and she's like, "I only know two of them, bitch. What do you mean you've killed three people? Who's the other one?" And the other one is Sejanus, but she doesn't know that like he's the reason why Sejanus died. So instead of like spinning shit and be like, I feel bad that like Sejanus died, my friend died, and like I didn't do anything to stop it. Instead of saying something like that, like a normal person would might say, this motherfucker just says, "Oh, the third one was my old self." For the record, the other two were a tribute in the 10th Hunger Games, and then the mayor's daughter. And they're like trying to do this escape plot. But yeah, no. So he says my old self, and it's like that's fucking stupid. No wonder she didn't believe you. And so she's already like really suspicious. She's like, what the fuck if I stay here? If I stay here, am I gonna die? And she's like, oh, I'm gonna go out and pick swamp potato, which they call Katniss. Hey. Um, and so she's like, I'm gonna go pick Katniss. And he's like, girl, it's still raining. What do you mean you're gonna go pick like potatoes? There's not gonna be any. And she's like, I'm not made of sugar. I won't melt or whatever. And so she dips, and then he gets freaked out. He runs after her with a gun, and he starts shooting it blindly. And he sees like a hallucination of her in the dress she wore at the reaping, which she was not wearing in the cabin. But he sees this hallucination of her in her dress, and he shoots at it, and he goes to inspect the body, and it's not there because of course it's not. That was a hallucination, dummy. And so he's just like, so she's maybe alive, maybe missing. And he doesn't know. He doesn't know where she's at. And this motherfucker's a control freak, so that like terrifies him. And um, he ends up dumping the guns in the lake, returns back to the capital, and is like, "I'm gonna run the Hunger Games now. I'm gonna run, or I'm gonna be a game maker with this like psycho Dr. Gall." And that's kind of where that book ends. But her legacy still lives on through like music and art, and it's like this really poignant statement on like you can people may not know who you were, but they will remember like your like songs, your art, your writing, whatever. And then on the other hand, we have Rue from the original Hunger Games, who people say this, and I'm like, I don't like I want to know why, but I know why, and it's just because she died. Um, Rue dies pretty horribly in the 74th Hunger Games with Katniss, who's like supposed to be protecting her, and it's like she shoots the guy who like throws a spear, and it's like there's literally nothing you could do. Um, I would say Rue is a like more clear-cut case of like being doomed by the narrative, which is another term that gets thrown around, but not as like bad. But yeah, Rue is never going to make it out of the arena alive. We knew this because it's like the book is told from Katniss's point of view. It's really predictable. But sorry, I just kicked the table that this is sitting on. But um, so yeah, Rue was never going to make it out of that arena alive. Um, at least not like in any like way we would have made sense. But so Rue like is kind of the spark of the revolution. In the movies, we see that after she dies, District 11 has a lot of like uprisings and shit. they're like throwing shit and everything, and they're beating up peacekeepers, which like slay, and they're like destroying property. We don't get that in the book because the book is told from Katniss's like limited point of view. But so we like, and so she's the reason that District 11 presumably is uprising. Um, and then on the other hand, we all like she is mentioned in Catching Fire as PETA paints a portrait of her like her dead and like the flowers that Katniss placed around her. Um, like he paints it for his like little session with the game makers where he has to like prove his skills on the floor, and they try to cover it up with the carpet. Doesn't work very well because Katniss can still kind of see it and she knows what it is. And then and so I think she might be mentioned in Mockingjay at some point. I don't remember. I haven't read the books in a long time. I've seen the movies like recently, but I don't think she was mentioned. But yeah, so Rue kind of like is like the spark of the revolution. She's the start of the revolution in the original trilogy. And but the reason why she can't haunt the narrative like people say she does is that yeah, she kind of like is like a lingering presence, especially in like the later volumes, but like she's on like we see her on the page and like on screen for a decent enough portion of time in the first book that like yeah, her death has lasting impact, but that's not what the theory or like that's not what the like thing is, you know. um like I get where you're coming from, but you're wrong, you know. And um you know, like death having a lasting impact on a story or like on a narrative is just kind of like a basic rule of storytelling. Like it's like you're kind of told that everything in your story has to have an impact unless you're like characters like I'm like I say characters like if they're just like nameless grunts or like an army or something, then yeah, they're not going to like have a huge lasting impact on your like the story you're telling. But people's like deaths, like personal deaths having like a narrative impact, that's just like basic rules of writing. You don't get trope points for that, you know? Because that's just how you're supposed to write stories. You know, like yeah, I know like people want it to fit into this like little like trope box or whatever that's like deemed special, but like it doesn't, and that's fine. You guys just like tragic characters. I like them too. We can all admit it. Um, okay, next one that we're gonna do, we're gonna like it's from the same franchise again. We're doing Maureen Prescott and Billy Loomis, and then okay, that's not written very well, but it's fine. Okay, so Maureen Prescott mentioned in the first movie, pretty like she's the main reason why Billy is like killing people, because she slept with his father, presumably. He could be lying. We don't know. Um, but thematic, on like a thematic level, Scream is at least the first one is about like the sensationalized news coverage. I think this movie came out shortly after the O.J. Simpson trial, um, but I don't think it was necessarily about O.J. Simpson. It was more so about like a couple other serial killers that were getting like really like high profile news coverage. Probably like namely Ted Bundy. I think that was in the 80s, where you had people literally showing up to his trial dressed as his victims. What the fuck is wrong with y'all? Um, but yeah, so like a huge message is that the sensationalized news coverage is kind of like a problem. Gail Weathers' whole character is about this because she writes that book, and she's like a reporter and whatever, and she's writing this book about the death of Maureen Prescott, how the guy that got put away for it was not the right guy, which it wasn't. What um, and everything like that. So that's whole like Gail's whole motivation for like antagonizing Sydney is like, she was trying to get an answer out of her about why she thought it was Cotton Weary, which she said so in the trial, so it doesn't really matter. And then there's like this whole like plot point about how Billy and Stu, they're already psychopaths, and then they say like pretty directly that the TV shows aren't to blame for like psychopaths being made because psychopaths already exist. They just make them more creative. Um, which because at the time there was like a lot of like talk about how violent video games and violent movies and shit were gonna make people more violent, which and yeah, that's been like a topic on both sides. It doesn't have any real like actual weight to it, but it was kind of like that was something that Scream was tackling at the time, which yeah, because Billy's fucking crazy, you know? Um and or like the like yeah, I think it's actually movies. I'm thinking of Scary Movie with the TV shows. Um but Scary Movie, of course. So yeah, Maureen's death is about this like it's on a more like modern level, it's sort of about true crime. Um you look at true crime people who are really insensitive about handling like, actual case topics. We have like the My Favorite Murder podcast and like the girly like cookies and crime videos, and it's like uh you guys are like girlifying or like ascetizing real life tragedies and everything, and you're making it really insensitive to victims, and you don't really actually care about them, and you don't give any of your money to these people like you probably should be because you're using their family death in like a way that's fucked up. But um, so that's Marine on a thematic level. She fits the whole thing about like haunting the narrative because she like is not on screen. We never see her. We only ever get like vague mentions to her. Her like death is the reason why Billy and Sid's relationship is on the rocks as much as it is. Uh, like she was the first guy that Billy killed. She's like the first ghost face victim, technically and like that type of whole thing. So she's like a lingering presence throughout the first movie, and kind of the second one. Pretty much anytime Gail's around and she talks about her book, or like Cotton Weary's in the second movie too, so that makes sense. And then on the other hand, Billy Loomis. People say this. I'm presuming is because he shows up as like a like mind ghost in the fifth and sixth movies. I think, because his daughter is the main character. Um, and this one isn't like as bad. Like this isn't the worst Scream take I've seen on this. I saw someone say that Sydney is like haunting the narrative, and it's like, did we watch the same movies? Sydney is on screen. She's a main character for 90% of this franchise. You cannot be in five out of the six movies and be signed on for the seventh and like haunt the narrative. That's just not possible. Um, but Billy, on the other hand, he dies in the first movie, and he shows up as like a, I'm just gonna say Force ghost, but that's not like that's Star Wars. He shows up as like a mind ghost in fifth and sixth movies. So that's why people say it, but I don't think that's possible because franchises, the way they work is that it's one long story. So again, is that whole thing of like your death having an impact on your story does not like fit the trope, because the trope is someone who is not present in the story proper. Um, which is why we have that like yeah, except for prequels, but prequels like they come after your main story, you know. So yeah, Billy can't be haunting the narrative because he was on screen for a significant portion in that like he was, present for the first one. And then yeah, in the second one, his mom is the killer. So she like her like main motivation is like trying to get back at Sydney for getting her son like killed or whatever, which she didn't, but sorry, I'm sitting on remotes. Sorry. Um, I'm fixing my hair. Um, it's like you can't uh be but yeah, so I can see like if you want to say, oh yeah, Billy is kind of like haunting the second one. I mean, yeah, he is haunting the second one. He is haunting the fifth and sixth ones, but that's like not the narrative, you know? The narrative has to be like the whole continuous story for it to work. And that's why prequels are the caveat because prequels are like supplementary material. Um, you don't necessarily have to watch them to get like the main story. Um, but yeah, so his like death and his character does have like a haunting presence on the rest of the show or on the rest of the movies. I will give you that. But haunting the narrative, no, he does not. Yeah. So yeah, Billy, like I see, it's another one I get why people say it, or at least I see why they say it, but I don't really get it. And Sydney is just no. What are you talking about? You know? Um, okay. Next one, we're gonna do. Actually, wait. I'm gonna go a little bit out of order from my outline here, and we're gonna do. I'm gonna mention this now, because I don't want to talk about this person too often. But we're gonna do Lily Potter slash Lily Evans and Regulus Black. Um, the reason why I say I don't want to talk about this person is J.K. Rowling is a stupid writer with zero writing brain and zero curiosity, and she wrote like maybe a couple good books in the '90s. Which not really. People have picked apart Harry Potter for a lot longer than I could and a lot better than I could. Um, but Lily Potter, Lily Evans, whatever you want to call her, does fit the trope or does fit like the tech, like the definition of haunting the narrative. She is like the first character that we get mentioned of. Literally, like her self-sacrifice, her love for Harry is the reason why the whole plot is in motion. Because, well, she killed Voldemort accidentally. Well, I say killed. He comes back, it doesn't matter. But literally, I think every at least once per book, Harry Potter and like his character, whenever he talks to someone new, they who like knew Lily, which is a lot of people because it's the Wizarding World, it's not that big. Um, but anytime like it gets brought up that like they knew Lily, they mention how similar their eyes are. He's constantly getting compared to his dead mom. And yeah, it's sad and everything. And like her love or whatever is like pretty um her like love for Harry is like kind of a permeating presence. And she shows up a couple different times as ghosts, but it's like wand magic. It's not like her actual like person. It's just like a couple like little snippets here and there. Um, Thematically Lily fits because J.K. Rowling and especially in Harry Potter, there's this really big emphasis on like mothers. If you like go back and you watch those movies or you read those books, you'll notice this. The like characters that we are like deemed as good, especially like the woman characters, they're all mothers, and they're all mothers that love their kids. Even Narcissa Malfoy, who like gets like not even a redemption arc, like she just does something good. But like because J.K. Rowling is a bad writer, she kind of treats it as like a redemption arc, or redemption or whatever. Because her love for Draco overpowers her like servitude to the Dark Lord. Um, so Lily like does the ultimate sacrifice of dying for her kid as a mother. So yeah, thematically it makes sense because yeah, all the good women characters are mothers or like they have something adjacent to motherhood, and all of the bad characters, well, except for Petunia, but even then they get like something like similar like to a redemption. In like the final book, they get this like little moment of like, I'm sorry we were like that good to you or whatever. And again, J.K. Rowling's a bad writer, so it kind of like comes across as like a little bit of a redemption, sort of, not really. Um, and it's like you're trying to make this thing happen where it's like you can see her forcing this messaging where it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't belong. Of like, oh, these characters who are mothers, they do good things for their kids or like out of love for their kids. And we know now with her like whole turf bullshit that she like is kind of a sexist woman. Um, but so yeah, so Lily does fit the definition, and then like I said, I'm only bringing her up now, so I don't have to talk about Harry Potter at all after this. And then on the other hand, we have Regulus Black. People say this about Regulus. Regulus is mentioned, I believe, in one chapter of the Deathly Hallows. He gets a brief mention in Half-Blood Prince as RAB. Um, the reason why, again, I say like the reason why Regulus doesn't fit is because J.K. Rowling is a bad writer, and despite her claims otherwise, she did not have everything planned out for the series as much as like she says she did. Regulus has no mention, even when Sirius is around. Like Sirius doesn't mention him until the fifth book, when they're looking at the family tree, or he might not even mention him then. Like, geez, I haven't like I think he like gives like a brief nod, and But so like he talks about Regulus like a tiny bit maybe, and like in the fifth book, and that's where we're introduced to him. Um, and so yeah, I was wrong. Now that I'm remembering it, it's been like a while since I watched those movies. Um, I only watched the movies. I didn't read the books that much. Fair, like just like as a fair warning. But so yeah, so even when Sirius like got debuted in like the third book, nothing about his behavior and nothing about his storyline would suggest that like Regulus had a lasting impact. And um story wise, Regulus's kind of whole like point as a character is that he sacrificed and no one cared, no one remembered him for his sacrifice. That's his whole point of like being mentioned, is that no one knew what he did and no one like he didn't do anything like that good. Um he actively made the fight against Voldemort harder because he fucked with the locket. Um so And yeah, so story wise, he doesn't make sense because like his whole point is that like no one remembers him. So you can't really haunt the narrative when no one remembers he existed and no one cared. Um, but like just as like a Doyleist like reason, um, he like J.K. Rowling did not have his existence thought of until the fifth book. And I don't believe for like a fucking moment that she like knew what she wanted to do with him up until like the seventh book where she wrote that. And like, yeah, you're like you may think I'm being really harsh, but and I am a little bit because J.K. Rowling is a stupid evil person, and I don't need to respect her at all because these books are not that good. These books are not written that well. Anyone who like reads them as an adult does not like have nice things to say about these books. Um, at least not usually. If you're a Potterhead, maybe, but even then, read a different book, you know? Stop giving J.K. Rowling money, stop making stop mentioning her, stop like giving her like relevancy, and she will eventually go away, probably. She already has like way too much money that she doesn't know what to do with. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of why I'm saying like Regulus does not fit because simply because J.K. Rowling is a bad writer and J.K. Rowling did not plan everything out that she like people thought she did, or even like she claims otherwise. Because these books are full of plot holes. These books are full of inconsistencies, and it's clear she was just writing out of her ass. All right, that's enough Harry Potter forever. I don't want to talk about it anymore, so we're not going to. Um, on to the next one. Let's do Padme Amidala from the Star Wars prequels, and then I'd say let's do Elphaba Throp from Wicked, which this is another one where I've seen like maybe two people say this, and I know why they say it after like thinking about it, but I just have to make a point. Because the person who said Elphaba also said Rapunzel from Tangled, and it's like, did we watch the same movie? Um, that bitch is the main character. What do you mean? Um, so I think we're gonna do Padme Amidala. So Padme is the mother of Luke Skywalker and Leia Skywalker. She was the wife to Anakin Skywalker, who became Darth Vader. Um, her presence in the original trilogy, I don't think she ever gets a mention outside of just being Luke and Leia's mom. Like Luke and Leia's mother is definitely like haunting the narrative because they're so like her. But like Padme has this like lasting legacy of being like a noble woman. She's like a great love or whatever. And she was like a diplomat. She politically was very active. She was like a freedom fighter. She was fighting for freedom across the galaxy, trying to hold back the empire for as long as possible. And she did fail, but at the end, she ultimately won because her kids, you know, destroyed that bitch. Um, I looked it up. George Lucas had like a semi plan for Padme. He knew that like Luke and Leia's mom was like because the twist in the fifth movie is that Anakin or Darth Vader is Luke's father. Um, so he had a vague idea of what to do. So we do feel her influence enough to the point where it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That Padme who dies at the end of the third chapter three, the third prequel, because with complications of childbirth, and Leia has like brief flashes of her memory I've seen people say that like they might have been like a forced thing, but it's like it doesn't really matter either way. She still knows what her mom vaguely looked like and like vaguely what her legacy was. Um, so yeah, she does fit the trope or the definition. I keep saying trope as a definition. I need to stop calling it trope because it's like a different thing. Um, but yeah, so she does fit the definition of like haunting the narrative. It has been admittedly a little bit since I've revisited the Star Wars prequels, but I would really like to someday. Um, or revisit Star Wars in general. Um, but yeah, so she does fit. We feel her influence throughout the galaxy, even in like the sequel trilogy, you can kind of feel her presence. On the other hand, we have Elphaba, and the person who made this edit, I know why they say this because I thought about it for like just a little bit. Um, well, because they also include Rapunzel. It's like, what do these two things have in common? And if you're taking solely the absence part of the definition of haunting the narrative of like the character is absent from something, then I guess it makes sense. But like you're missing a key part of the definition that's like absent from the narrative itself. Elphaba and Rapunzel are both the main character of their like respective movies slash musicals. Um, and I asked this person why they thought Elphaba haunted the narrative, or like why they said that, and they said because Glinda has to live on knowing that she's the reason why Elphaba was viewed as a monster the whole time, and the whole reason behind kind of like her leaving and she's like haunting also the other characters like the scare guy gets turned to the scarecrow, the guy gets turned to the tin man, um, as well as like a couple others. Um, and I was like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, kind of, but that's not what haunting the narrative means. Haunting other characters with your absence does not mean you're haunting the narrative. Narratives are made up of a bunch of different characters. So, um, yeah, that's why she doesn't fit. It's pretty cut and dry. But I just need to like talk about it a little bit because like that whole Rapunzel thing. If you wanted to say that Rapunzel's kidnapping haunted the narrative, or like the idea of the baby princess of Corona, which I think is where Tangle takes place, if I remember right. If you wanted to say that that like idea or that like event haunted the narrative of Tangled, I would say probably I'd walk with you to that pier and I'd say probably that is true. Um, like I so yeah, I do understand like if you said that, but they didn't say that. They just said Rapunzel, and it's like, okay, well that's not how that works. Um, all right. Next to okay, I'm gonna be a little bit funny here. I'm gonna do Rose Quartz, aka Pink Diamond from Steven Universe, and Jigsaw, aka John Kramer from the Saw movies. Um, so Rose Quartz, we see her brief flashes. We see her like videotape she used for Steven. We see like everyone in the story is constantly bringing up his mother in relation to him and his accomplishments. And like Steven has to like kind of clean up the mess that Rose Quartz left for him. And we see like little inklings of her life through storytelling or like stories people are telling her, Steven. Um, through little flashbacks a couple times, like premonitions, visions that Steven gets in like the fourth season. Like we never actually see Rose Quartz herself. And that's kind of the big thing is because Rose, like she's like her gem is literally living inside Steven's belly. And you can't remove it because you will kill Steven. And I used to like Steven Universe. I used like when it was still airing, I was a big fan. I'm not really a big fan anymore, so it can be like a little bit critical. Um, Rose Quartz, her character development is told in reverse, right? So as the show is going on, we get like we know about her at the end of the Crystal War, um, where she's this like decent person and sort of like semi-decent person, but like we know what like she was a noble hero. She was like a noble. She led the rebellion of against Homeworld and everything, and she's like this whole freedom fighter thing. And towards the end of the story, you find out, oh, she was Pink Diamond. She was kind of like a part of this like oppressive regime. And like, it's like, I get why, like, I get her character arc is told in reverse, but I still don't like her, you know? Like, she has a lot of issues. Like, she kind of fucks with people. Um, like openly, like it's not like hidden at all. And the series itself uh like does not let go of a lot of this. Like her like Rose is kind of put under like a lot of scrutiny by this like the story that Rebecca Sugar wrote, which like I guess is fine, but like do it with the other diamonds. Like you tried to like make me feel bad for her. And yeah, so Rose herself, yeah, pretty cut and dry. We never see her on screen. Her like legacy is living on inside the character's stomach, and like a lot of like the show is just kind of backtracking through her character arc and trying to like uncovering the secrets of her, like what she did, and like uncovering more stories of like her dark time during the war and everything. Um, on the other hand, Jigsaw, aka John Kramer, the Jigsaw Killer, Jigsaw dies in the third movie. Um, we don't actually see a lot of him in the other two movies. We see him a couple times, but like, um, but yeah, so we see him a couple times enough. And then we see him on screen a lot during the third movie, as well as Saw X, the prequel movie. And then like the rest of the movies is like his apprentices. So like four through six. No, there's seven. There's seven movies in the main series. So yeah, four through seven, and then we see him on screen a couple different times during Jigsaw, the other prequel movie, and then Spiral, the Book of Saw about the copycat killer. Yeah, this is another one you can tell. Like, I get why you're saying this, but like, I don't believe you. Yeah, again, the way franchises work is like continuous stories. Is you can't have one character like on screen for three movies and then say that they're haunting the narrative because no. Um, you're like, yeah, death leaves like a lasting impact. And Jigsaw does live on through his apprentices and like through that one copycat killer that never mattered again. Um, but so yeah, that's just like I get like yeah, I get why you're saying it, but you're not correct in this one. Sorry. Um, okay, next one. Let's do okay. We're gonna do Lily Belcher from Bob's Burgers, and because I have a lot to say about this one, and then let's see, let's do Tagline. And uh, again, this is another one that I see quite a few people say, but like not enough. I mean, I see enough people say that it's like an issue. I got into an argument on TikTok in a comment section about this one actually, but not Lily, but Tate. Okay, so Lily Belcher, Bob Belcher's mother in Bob's Burgers, who is dead from the series start, and we never meet her except for a couple of like glimpses. Um, so why do I say she haunts the narrative? So Lily is mentioned quite a few times. Her name doesn't really like come up a whole lot until later on in the series so far. But we do know about her existence. We know that her death left a pretty big impact on Bob's father. And so Bob's Burgers is not told like a continuous story. It is an episodic TV show that does kind of just mean it does its own little stories. So you can feel like Lily's death. Even when Bob is first shown, I think Bob's father is first introduced in season three. Bob fires the kids, and we don't see him. We just hear his voice, and as he tells Bob to get back to work. And yeah, his mom is not present, and Bob is described as being alone in the restaurant with his father. So we know that she's not there. We know her like at least not around. And season five, Father of the Bob, which is the Christmas episode of that season, we find out that after Bob's mom died, his dad became like this like a pretty calloused person that like did became the person that drove Bob out. Um, which is an episode that I really relate to, but I don't need to go into it for this point. A couple of, let's see, I think a couple seasons after she gets mentioned a couple times. There's an episode I think in season nine, season 10-ish, where Tina is doing a project for school where she has to interview her grandfather and she has to ask him like the story or like the event that most shaped him. And Bob accurately predicts that it's going to be the tree story. We don't know what the tree story is. This is an episode. This is like one of the show episodes that Bob Burgers does frequently enough that it's like kind of a whole thing of like three stories, one from each of the kids. Um, and so uh, Tina is like trying to get the whole family to stop talking about it because she wants to wait until Pop Pop gets there. And but they're all telling these wild stories, and Bob himself does not know what the tree story is. Um, but it turns out whenever like Big Bob does come, he starts. Bob has this whole thing of the episode of his father doesn't like to talk about like stuff in the past. His father doesn't want to talk about stories that happened to him. He doesn't like if you ask him about like what event shaped him, he'll tell you the tree thing, but he won't go into any details. And even if he does, it's like one sentence. So when Pop Pop does finally show up and Tina pries just enough and with like Bob's help of being like, you don't want to talk about this, but you need to. We find out that a tree when they were like Bob's dad and his mom were camping one night, and a tree almost fell on them uh, when they were like sleeping during a big storm, and like the tree crushed the tent, and it was like really really close to Big Bob, and it would have landed right on where like Bob's mom sleeps or was sleeping before she got up to the bathroom. Um, so yeah, so that's another bit of like we see like this effect that Lily Belcher had on the whole family. We get like uh, Bob's grandma, so the kid's great grandma, trying to like deal with Lily during World War II, and there's like a German spy on the roof of their apartment building, and the reason they know this is because they hear him talking over the radio during like a static break or something. Um, and then there's the episode Show Mama from Your Grave, which actually came before the radio episode, but I did it on a morning run accident, where the kids are trying to go snow tubing and they go to the same town where Bob's mom is buried. And so they go visit the graveyard and they risk not like snow tubing in order to try and find Bob's grave or Lily's grave. And they try to get a map, everything, everything's going wrong because they can't see anything in the snow and they're poor, so they couldn't afford like an actual headstone. They just had like the plaque type thing, the one that lays flat on the ground. And then Linda eventually finds it. They talk to her a little bit. They leave cards and stuff, I think, or they try to, but they're told not to by the groundskeeper. And I think the episode ends with Bob kind of standing there while the kids and Linda are going back to the car, and he stands there and he talks to his mom. And it's this really sad moment, and like honestly, like a little bit choked up. But and then let's see, I think after that, we get the Bob's Burgers movie, where we find out that so Louise Belcher wears ears. Everyone like knows that image of like Louise with her bunny ears. And a big thing with like Louise's character arc in this movie is trying to overcome like feeling inadequate. And like talking about it at one point. She's like, I wear these stupid ears because I was afraid to go to preschool one day and I just never took them off. And Bob and Linda are like, no, that's not why you have your ears, dude. Like that's like you have them because you were so brave to go to preschool without them. And Louise just got them at like the memory mixed up in her head. And they tell her that like the reason why like she like or where the ears came from is actually this hat that Lily used to wear. This hat that Lily used to wear was like a pink beanie, and Linda just added some bunny ears to it with like felt or whatever. I don't know. It's been a while since I watched that movie, and we see like in a flashback of like Bob walking with his mom. So this whole time, uh, Louise has been wearing something that reminds Bob of his mom on her head, and she never takes them off, and like literally never takes them off, like even when she's sleeping. Um, so we see that, and it's fucking heartbreaking. And like the whole show, like 13 seasons worth of Louise in her ears, and like we're finding out now. And while I don't think necessarily that this was the intention behind Louise's bunny ears, I think the actual reason is because they were just drawing stuff and it kind of stuck out. Um, why am I giving Lauren Buchard and the team of Bob's Burgers more grace than I gave J.K. Rowling over Regulus Black? Simply put, the stakes are just lower. This was not something that was like, this is not like a serialized show or like a serialized book series like Harry Potter was. It's not a continuous story. And simply like, we like finding out that like the ears that like Louise wore, where they came from, was kind of a big mystery throughout the series, and it was finally answered in the movie. Um, it was like something that people talked about at least, and then we find out, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. Um, I don't necessarily believe this was the intention going into like the series back in 2011, but it doesn't really matter because like this, yeah, I said the stakes are just lower. Um, like Louise's ears like are not the same thing as like a life or death mission to kill like Wizard Hitler, you know? Um, that's why I'm giving them like more of the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, so Lily is just like Bob's Burgers is a show about family, it's a show about love, and Lily's kind of like this lasting impact of love and family on Bob and his dad and the entire family themselves. And this is a really beautiful thing. Um, that they like kind of concluded, and I think she still gets brought up a couple times in the later seasons or like the newer seasons, but I can't remember any off the top of my head that were specific enough to mention. Um, Next, Tate Langdon. This is the one I got into like an argument with someone over, and they kind of rage quit on me. Um, Someone said Tate Langdon haunts the narrative, and I was like, no, because he's the main character of the first season of American Horror Story, and so that's not how that works. And the person was like, well, he haunts Violet the whole show, and I'm like, I'm sorry, is Violet the narrative? No, she's not. She's one character in an ensemble. That's not what like that means. And then um we've like and so we went back and forth a little bit and we are talking about the definition. I was like, the definition is like the absence of a character. Tate's not absent from the story. He's just a ghost. And she like the person rage quit on me and we're like, well, I guess your definition is the only one that's right then and no one else is correct. Even the person like that, like the person in the video we're talking about, like they got it wrong. And it's like, well, yeah, they did because they put a couple characters on here that don't match. And also, yeah, you like, what do you mean? My definition? You mean the definition? Like I'm actually like pretty vague in my definition. I'm actually giving you a lot of grace to like a lot of characters that some other people might not. But because I'm not like a pedant like that. I'm about other things, but not this. Except I am a little bit, but we're talking about literary theory here. It's a little bit different. And it was like, what do you mean? Like you grow up and act like an adult. What do you mean my definition? Like, and you're just rage quitting because I told you like no, your Blorbo wasn't like a character that fit this. And besides this person, I also saw this on Tumblr a little bit, but like Tumblr's full of people who like tailing it like that. And it's like I went into this argument, like it's my fault because I forgot that like people who like Tate Langdon are insane. Um, or at least people who like Tate Langdon like that. All right. Let's see, who's next? Okay. I think we're gonna do Lyanna Stark from Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire. And the heads up, just another thing I haven't really watched or anything like that. And then on the other side, we're gonna do two at the same time. We're gonna do Prim and Finnick from the Hunger Games because they die in the same book and they have really similar plots, or not plots, but you know what I mean. So Lyanna Stark dies before Song of Ice and Fire. She's kind of the reason why this whole thing is taking place at all. Jon Snow is her son, but he's renamed because Lyanna Stark and I think it's Rhaegar Targaryen, I think is how you say his name, have this like really turbulent love story that ends up being like this whole thing. And finally it just kind of ends with her dying, and so does Rhaegar Targaryen and a couple other characters in this like huge rebellion thing that's like a big history lesson that I don't need to go into. Um, so yeah, she definitely haunts the narrative. Like her legacy is kind of like Jon Snow himself, but also like the houses of Stark and Targaryen are kind of like left reeling from this, from what I can tell. Um, so yeah, I don't need to go too into depth because I haven't seen Game of Thrones, or I haven't read A Song of Ice and Fire. On the other hand, Prim and Finnick, I see people say Prim more often than I see people say Finnick, which I guess makes sense. Um, but they do say them, and it's like, no, you guys are getting that thing wrong again. Um, Prim, I saw someone make a decent, like, compelling argument for this for the first book, because in the first book, Prim is not on the page that often. she's present for I think the reaping and like the little bit of a like visit afterwards. But after that we don't see her. But like her like that's Katniss's main motivation is for Prim. And she gets a bit more of like a more present role in Catching Fire. Um, and then let's I think it's yeah, Mockingjay, she gets a little bit like she's on page a lot. And then in Mockingjay is the like part two or whatever, is when she dies by rebel bombing. Um that coin like deliberately put um to target her, not maybe not target Prim specifically, but to like make the capital look bad. Um so Prim doesn't really haunt the narrative because again, she's on screen for like a decent amount of time before she's like absent. For like the first book, you can make a compelling argument, and they did. And I still don't agree with it, but like it's at least a decent, like well thought out argument. But like for the rest of the series, it's just like no. Like, yeah, like Prim is Katniss's main motivation for a lot of the events of the series, but that doesn't mean like she's haunting the narrative. Same goes for Finnick. Finnick dies in Mockingjay, but we're introduced to him in Catching Fire. There's no mention of Finnick in the first book, from what I remember, um, or even in like in the first movie or anything like that. There's no mention of like the District 4 tribute, who kind of like gets sold out a lot and was like the youngest victor ever. Um, but we do meet him in Catching Fire, and then he's on. So he's a main character in Catching Fire. He's also a main character in Mockingjay because in District 13, him and Katniss talk to each other a lot because they're both missing Pete and Annie. Um, and then I, because he dies in Mockingjay Part Two, or like whatever, when like the sewers of the Capitol, I assume that's the reason why people say he haunts the narrative. And it's like, no, because he's on screen for enough of it. He dies like towards the tail end of Mockingjay. Like that's not how that works. So yeah, pretty like again, cut and dry. A lot of these are going to be like the rest of these are going to be pretty cut and dry. I don't need to talk too much about a lot of them. Um, all right. Next one is going to be Beatrice Baudelaire from A Series of Unfortunate Events. And we'll do Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow. Um, so Beatrice Baudelaire is kind of the reason. She before we find out who she is, for real, there is a message in the beginning of every single of series of unfortunate event book, where the author Lemony Snicket, in universe, dedicates the book to Beatrice, and then includes like a sad message, kind of hinting that she's dead. I think in sixth book is when we finally get like confirmation that she's dead. Um, and then we also realized who Beatrice is. And so for like half of the series is driven by this plot about the sugar bowl, which has a lot of theories about it. No one really knows what's in it except for like maybe a few people. There is an actual answer that the author, Daniel Handler, who's playing Lemony Snicket, does say, like has an actual answer, and that people write to him and they get it right every year. Um, So there is like an actual reason for why people want this sugar bowl. And kind of thematically, the VFD in universe is like this really scummy secret organization, where it's like they literally kidnap children, drug them, tattoo them, and then like force them to work on these like really stupid cases until like for a year or like until the tattoo heals. And then they're like ready to go out and be like their secret agents and stuff. So in like Beatrice is kind of thematically, she's about kind of about love. She's kind of a bad person. Um, we know like that the reason why we're reading the books eventually is because Lemony Snicket is writing all of these because for the Baudelaire children, because of his love for Beatrice Baudelaire, and kind of the lasting like he loved her so much and he like cared about her so much, and then she kind of left him for Bertrand. I think is like her husband's name, something like that. So I think it's Bertrand or Bertram, one of those two. Um, where she left him for her, and then like he's writing all these like as an in memoriam thing, and then we find out towards the end of the last book that the baby Beatrice is born to Kit Snicket, and Kit Snicket makes the Baudelaire children name them as like after a dead parent, which was kind of hinted at, and then Kit outright says it is like you need to name it after your family members who died, as like it's a tradition. And then so the Sugar Bowl, I don't know why, but in book six, we find out that Beatrice Baudelaire stole the Sugar Bowl from Esme Squalor. Um, and then we don't know why yet, but we do know like that's the whole reason why like Esme is fucking pissed at these children, these like three orphans, and that's the reason like why. So that's the reason why she hates them, and then this kind of sets the whole plot of like the rest of the series in motion. So that's why Beatrice kind of counts for this trope. Because again, we never see her. She lives on a legacy through her, like three orphans, and then Beatrice Snicket. And then later on, Beatrice and Lemony meet up, I think, at like a cafe that's like mentioned quite a bit. They meet up there and they talk about like like the Beatrice and the Baudelaire children and their like adventures and everything like that. And so yeah, so pretty like yeah, decent enough. Like thematically, it makes sense. Story wise makes sense, everything like that. On the other hand, we have Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, from the MCU. This is one where people say it because she died in Endgame and pretty gruesomely, actually. And her like people kind of mention her a little bit through I think it's in Hawkeye, this TV series, and Thunderbolts, the new movie. Um, so again, the problem is that MCU counts as like it's a franchise. It's kind of one continuous story, and really no character from either like the MCU or like the DCEU could count for this trope because they're on screen too much, except for like Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, but that's it. Um, and I don't want to talk about Uncle Ben because it's been done at death. But so Natasha Romanoff doesn't really fit because she's on screen from, I believe, I know it's like her debut on screen is in Avengers, but it might actually be in Iron Man 2 if I'm remembering correctly. And then she's on screen for like a lot of other movies. So it doesn't really fit because until Endgame, she's not dead and she's like a major character. Um, so yeah, that's why like that doesn't work. And I like that's pretty simple. I'm with the remote. Um, So pretty simple. She just can't because for like she has enough screen time that it doesn't count. All right. Um, next one is going to be we're gonna do Allison De Laurentiis from Pretty Little Liars and uh one of your Beck, aka like Beck from You. Um, so hearing people talk about Beck, we'll do this in reverse order because I can talk more about Beck. I haven't actually seen You, but I looked this up for this video. Um, so the way you hear people talk about Beck from You, you'd think she was dead from like the series beginning. Um, no, she's a main like a main character for the whole first season. And like I get like people say this because she shows up as a hallucination to Joel enough times or Joe Goldberg. I don't know if it's Joe or Joe, but she shows up as a hallucination and everything like those like at least season three, four, and five maybe. But like that's literally it. And it's like, guys, like she's a main character. Like again, death having a lasting impact is just basic storytelling rules. So you don't get points for that. That's kind of like the thing I keep saying, but it's true. Um, so yeah, you like listen to people talk about it, and like I thought, like I legitimately thought she was dead from the beginning. Like that's like how people talk about her. And it's like, no, turns out she's not. She's actually like a main character. And so it's like, okay, fine, whatever. Uh, and then Allison De Laurentiis from Pretty Little Liars, pretty simple. She goes missing. This is like another Laura Palmer case where it turns out actually because uh she's not dead, but she's like around. She's like doing other shit, and no one really knows like who she like that she's alive until I think season four or something. I don't remember. But for like the first half of Pretty Little Liars, it makes sense. Why is my hair like this? And like it makes sense that she's like haunting the narrative. Like she's shown in like brief flashbacks, these like shows up in I think dreams a couple different times. And then there's a moment where we see her like for a little bit at the beginning before she goes missing. We see her from like other characters like POVs, and we learn how like she's kind of a shitty friend. Like she's not a great friend to these people, but like they still love her, I guess. And then when it turns out she is alive, it doesn't really ruin the like this like idea or this definition, I guess, because frankly, like Pretty Little Liars is just like not a great written show. A lot of people have pointed that out. It's not just me, and I haven't finished it yet, but I know like what happens in it because I looked it up. Because I don't care about spoilers that much. Um, so yeah, so she just fits. Like she's like the missing girl archetype. There's a couple different of these that you might have noticed. There's like the dead family member, and then like or like the dead love interest, and then the like missing teenage girl. Or like the most common ones, or like the dead family member just in general. Um, but yeah, so Allison, uh, pretty simple. Where'd my marker go? Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. Okay. So starting to like get towards the end here. Next one we have Mikey Berzatto from The Bear. And then we'll just do Joel from The Last of Us, which I see a lot of people say, but it doesn't really make sense, which of course not. First up, though, Mikey Berzatto. Mikey's dead from the beginning of the show. We see him in like I think a flashback episode or two, and that's about it. We learn about his drug addiction. We learn about his whole family history and everything through Carmi and his friend Richie. Um, but so like the themes of the bear kind of about like family trauma, like addiction, like you have generational like family shit going on, like history and everything. Um, and Carney is kind of dealing with like all of this family bullshit. Like the death of his brother is like clearly weighing on him throughout the show. At least like the first season is more obvious. It's like okay, so it makes sense why you're fucking upset and sad and everything. And like while you're trying to run this restaurant that was literally like ran by your dead brother, which is like the main thing I think is like why you could say this is because like the restaurant that they work in was ran and owned by like his brother Mikey, and he's dead now. So like this like restaurant is kind of a living memorial. Everyone in the restaurant who worked for Mikey talks about him, and they all like remember him fondly and everything, even like despite his addiction and everything. So yeah. Um, let's see. We have Michael from The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Actually, wait, no, shoot. Hold on. I forgot I was supposed to do Joel. Okay. Joel dies at, like I think season two, somewhere in season two in The Last of Us, and there's only two seasons out. So already like you can't say this, but people already do. And he's apparently like he shows up in flashbacks about like the game series or whatever, which he's still on screen for a decent portion of it before he dies, so it doesn't really matter either way. Bing bang boom, that's done. Okay, now we're gonna do Michael from The Perks of Being a Wallflower, another character who is never shown. We just know about them, and then we're gonna do Jinx from Arcane, which is another one I see people say that doesn't make any sense. Um, So, Michael from The Perks of Being a Wallflower is dead. He commits suicide. He leaves Charlie to deal with all the guilt and everything, or the grief. Charlie doesn't know what he's doing. Like he doesn't know how to deal with it, and then a couple other things happen. And he's kind of like a lingering presence that you can feel with all the bullshit that Charlie's going down with. Same with Aunt Helen, but Michael's more interesting to talk about. Um, because Aunt Helen, like you learn about what she did to Charlie and everything like that, and you learn like she's part of the reason why Charlie acts the way he does. Um, I saw someone that get pretty decent like commentary. It was like Charlie thinks that like giving like yourself over to your friends and like letting them like do whatever with you. Like Patrick kisses him and like he's like completely like submissive. He's not a very like he's not assertive or anything. He doesn't really talk unless people want him to. You learn that it's because He views friendship and like connection as a thing that he has to like give himself over to, partially because of what happened with him and his aunt. And also Michael, when he dies, leaves like a pretty open wound that never really fully heals. And then I believe, I don't, people say it might not be the suicide note, but it probably is. Um, and that's like this poem that Michael wrote um, for whatever reason that Charlie has. And he ends up, or he hears it from somewhere. Probably, I think he says he hears it from Michael. And the general assumption is that Michael wrote it. And that is, he gives it to, I think, Sam for Christmas, or he at least reads it aloud to Sam for Christmas. And it's like this really like heartbreaking moment as that like it's a deleted scene in the movie. It's shown in the book, but in the movie you see like the characters and like it shows their faces as he starts reading. And a couple people realize, and like you see Sam played by Emma Watson, and she like realizes really soon like what's going on and what he's reading, and she like covers her mouth and like she gets really fucking concerned. Which like, of course though, of course you would. He's reading the suicide note, you know. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of what that is. Jinx from Arcane. I was looking this up because I was like, what are people talking about? Jinx is like the only character in Arcane to be on screen for every single episode. You know, I think that people say this because there's the idea that she dies at the end of Arcane, which I haven't watched, but I know about it. Where she like the balloon or whatever, or like blimp that like takes off, and like she is like her like apparently she does like haunt other characters, sort of. Like I think there's a couple, like Echo, I think is the one people say, but like again, it's not like the characters by themselves are not like the narrative. Characters make up the narrative. One or two characters cannot be the whole narrative. And when you're shown on screen for every single episode, get out of here. Okay. Before we move on to the big piece of paper that is hiding something, we're going to talk about. I'm just going to give a brief shout out to a couple of different ones. On the yes side, we have Rachel Amber from Life is Strange, a game I have not played, but same archetype as Laura Palmer, missing girl. Let's figure out what happened to her. Same with Andy Bell from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and then Nina from Promising Young Woman is kind of the whole motivation behind the story. Again, a character you never get to meet, but you know about what happened to her through the story going on. Um, and then Kara from Undertale, literally like people say like she like literally like haunts the ground you're walking on. Like literally everything in that story ties back to this like fallen human from like before our character got there. And then yeah, we do meet Kara and like but you have to like go through a certain ending in order to get it. And like if you don't, then like you don't get to see it. On the no side, we have Jason Grace from the Rick Riordan universe, Neil Perry from Dead Post Society. I don't even need to go into that one. And then I saw someone say Jack Dawson from Titanic. Again, yeah, I don't need to go into that because what are you talking about? All right, finally for this piece of paper, boom, the maybe section. You can't see it that well, but I promise you it's there. Um, these are ones that I like. We're going back and forth. I'm going to figure out where to put them in real time with you guys. So first up, we have Jackie Taylor from Yellow Jackets. In case you were wondering why I brought up Yellow Jackets in the beginning. So Jackie Taylor is the captain of the soccer team before they go down, and then she dies at the end of the first season, or like we see her death. And the reason why she's in the maybe pile instead of the yes pile, because it should be pretty easy, is because the way Yellow Jackets is written is we're following two separate timelines. We're following the adult timeline, and we are following the teenager timeline. And so there's three seasons out right now. During the second and third season after Jackie's death, you can definitely feel her like haunting presence. Jackie's body is actually like on screen for at least part of season two, at least like the first couple episodes. Um, but so the teen timeline, we're not following any one specific point of view. We're not like learning about this as like the characters are, like we would if they were flashbacks or something. We're watching the events play out as they happen. Which is an interesting story. Like I'm not saying this to disparage Yellow Jackets or anything. This is just like how the story works. Um, and then on the adult timeline, we can definitely feel the presence of Jackie Taylor, because Shauna herself is being haunted by like her memory. She literally like came back from the woods to a life that is not hers. Um, it's not hers. It belongs to Jackie. People have been saying for a while now that like when Shauna came back, she like her parents had probably given up on like looking for her. So she literally like came back and she stepped into a role that was left for Jackie and a future for love was left for Jackie. Like she marries Jeff, Callie or Jackie's boyfriend. But Shauna was like having a thing on the side with him. She marries Jeff. She has the daughter and like the house in the suburbs and everything. She has like the decent, like wealthy-ish life with like um, no food insecurity or anything like that. She lives like every like I think it's every year for Jackie's birthday. They go to her parents' house and have dinner with them and have like a chat. And like her parents like literally cannot stop bringing up Jackie and comparing her to Jackie. Which I mean I get it. Her daughter, your daughter died, but like this is Shauna you're talking to. You're not talking to Jackie. What are we doing? Um, so yeah, Jackie's presence is a lot more felt in the first season in the adult timeline than she is the other ones. She's not actually mentioned that much in the other ones. Um, so I am going to tentatively put Jackie Taylor. Actually, wait, hold on. Jackie's ghost does show up a couple different times in season three, and then I believe maybe once in season two. She shows up, I think, once a season in the adult timeline. Once when Shauna is sitting on a bridge, and then another one when Shauna gets locked in a freezer. And so, like, if you look hard enough, you can definitely feel Jackie's presence, like in Shauna's storyline, because again, like Shauna stepped into a life that was made for Jackie. Um, and so, but like in the teen timeline, like we see that Jackie is the reason why, or she's like the turning point for these girls. This whole time they've been like staving off going mad. They've been able to like put it like they've been able to keep like their sanity. And then winter hits. They're already worried about food at this point, and then winter hits, and they're like running out faster because they have to stay warm and everything. And so Shauna and Jackie get to this big fight about like their friendship and everything. And Shauna tells Jackie to go sleep outside. Jackie does, and a couple other characters, I think Ty and Lottie, I specifically tell Shauna to go out and go get her, and she says no. And Ty had mentioned at some point, I think earlier in the episode, that it's going to get so cold that dying feels like falling asleep. And so Jackie's outside. She gets a fire going. It's still like there's no snow on the ground or anything, but it's like cold. Wearing her jacket and everything. That Letterman jacket is iconic for Jackie and really the whole team. Um, but specifically Jackie because it's like the memory. Um, but she gets the fire going, she falls asleep, and then her dream, she sees a lot of like the dead characters, and she sees a lot of the Yellow Jackets being nice to her after getting her back inside the cabin, and they give her like hot cocoa and whatever, and then she sees Laura Lee, who had died in a complete previous episode after like blowing up in a plane crash, or not in the plane crash, but like an old plane blew up that she was flying, and she sees her, and it finally starts clicking that she's not alive anymore. And in season two, after Jackie's dead, Shauna keeps her body in the meat shed and talks to it and does makeup and does her hair, which is all creepy and everything, and kind of talks to her ghost a little bit. Um, so you can definitely feel it like a little bit. But like the reason why she's in the maybe pile again is because she's on screen for a whole season. I tried looking up on the Yellow Jackets wiki to see if like they had an appearances thing that I could check and see like where Jackie was mentioned versus where she was actually shown, and I could not find it. Um, but yeah, so Jackie is on screen for a whole season, and we see her death and everything. But I am going to tentatively put her in the yes pile just because with the way that Yellow Jackets is told as a story, it makes enough sense and it's fine. Next up, we have Rose Tyler from Doctor Who. Reason Rose Tyler's in the maybe pile, even though like under normal circumstances I might put her in the no, is because I was looking it up. Doctor Who was told instead of seasons, they call them series, and also Doctor Who is not necessarily like a linearly told show. Um, I feel like you can jump into certain episodes and you don't need to know anything else about the plot. It's very episodic for the most part. Um, but like still, like the doctor after Rose Tyler gets transported to another dimension and gets stuck there, and whatever happens, the doctor will still make mention to like other companions. It's like, oh, I wish Rose was here, or she gets mentioned to like quite a bit actually, and like her presence is still felt in like their like adventures and whatever. And I'm really glad I held off on recording this until this week because if you haven't seen it yet, the 15th Doctor regenerates in the finale, and we see the regeneration process, and we see that they transform into Billie Piper, aka Rose Tyler's actress. And I originally was introduced to this because of a meme on Twitter that was like, um, something, whatever. I was like, why the fuck do you look like me? It was like the doctor or whatever. It was like, or Rose Tyler was talking to the doctor. It was like, why the fuck do you look like me? In like the second panel. And it's like, yeah. And it's not actually Rose Tyler from what I can tell. It's just, she just looks like her. And like something doctor, like the doctor says something about never forgetting a face. So it's just this idea that like Rose Tyler was the one for the doctor to like hang, like she was like one of the best companions. She was like his favorite or whatever. She was around for the ninth, 10th doctor, and then she still gets mentioned every so often. And like you can really tell, like you can tell that they're very clearly missing her in story. So like I get why people say this, but like the reason why she's like I said, she's in the maybe pile is because Doctor Who is told not linearly, but it is episodic. But the series has been going on since 2005. And it's like I said, they have series instead of seasons, but like that doesn't really count because they are listed as seasons. And so I'm just gonna leave this one up in the air. It's debatable. It's fine. And what better for someone trapped in an alternate dimension where we don't know their fate, you know, to be stuck in it maybe. Next up, we have Hannah Baker from 13 Reasons Why. In the book, this is a lot more clear cut. Yes, she does because the book is literally just following her tapes instead of like being shown flashback sequences. Um, the show more like, however, we are seeing like Hannah Baker as she is, and like yeah, her ghost does show up a couple different times. But like the story is like her like flashbacks through her tapes to what like we're seeing and like all this drama that she caused with her death, like all these characters are like going through it and they're dealing with all their bullshit and everything. So it is like pretty clearly yeah, but I put her in the maybe pile because we do see her on screen for a decent portion of time, and it's more so like someone made the joke I get like that she doesn't haunt the narrative, she straight up put a curse on it. Which, like, yeah, because without Hannah, like the first season of the show would not be like it would not be a thing because the first season is literally just her flashback sequences for the most part, and then like a couple other like side stories. So yeah, she is getting put in the yes pile. But there is like again, like if you wanted to say Hannah Baker doesn't haunt the narrative, I would like listen to you, because I assume you would have a reason. Um, And that's yeah, just because yeah, she is like the main storyteller, and we do feel her presence like through her flashback sequences and show. But yeah, okay. Next one is Ethel Kane, the fictional version of Ethel Kane, the singer in the album Preacher's Daughter. This one I put in the maybe because like she is we I think people there is the idea that she is telling the album as a story while she's dead. And like that's sort of true. It's also possible that that's not what's actually happening. But no, no, she is like telling the story as it's like as she's dying in the freezer. Um, but so the whole point of her story is like, oh, she's telling her like story with religion and her father and everything, and this whole like tumultuous history. It's another like kind of a Laura Palmer thing, like the Freezer Bride and like the Laura Palmer's dead body like comparisons are like not missing. Um, but so she's telling the story from like the beginning of her like her family is fucked up. She's dealing with like a lot of religious bullshit. Her first love, Willoughby Tucker, does like dies, and like a couple other like her other boyfriend dies, and then she runs off with this like guy to California who ends up cannibalizing and eating her, and or ends up murdering and cannibalizing her in like a drugged out like craze or whatever. And so she's living in the freezer for now, and then they like deal with that. So the reason why she's in the maybe pile is again, she's the one telling the story. Her ghost is very much clearly the character telling the story. Um, and she's like, yeah, she's dead from the start, but she's not absent. You know what I'm saying? Like she's not like, so she is getting put in the no pile. Um, like as much as I love Ethel Kane and I love her music and the album Preacher's Daughter, it's a no. You can't like you're she's the one telling the story. She's like the presence in it. Um, so next up we have Gwen Stacy. I think so. I almost didn't include this one in the maybe pile until I thought about it a little bit longer and like decided like if we wanted to talk about No Way Home, then like it's a decent maybe. Because yeah, she's dead from the start, and it's a different universe, it's a different story and everything. And but and Gwen Stacy is kind of like haunting the like Andrew Garfield Spider-Man in that movie. But that's like he's not the only character. And to be honest, the MCU movies are ensemble pieces, so you can't really be like haunting the narrative if you're only haunting one character. Um, and originally, like I thought she died in like the first Amazing Spider-Man movie with Andrew Garfield. And like I was like, okay, I could walk with you if you wanted to like try and argue to me why, or you wanted to like try and convince me that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a different narrative than the first movie, if there was like no connective tissue there. Um, but no, the like second movie is one that ends with Gwen Stacy dying, and then yeah, and then there's like now a third movie to go off of. So Gwen Stacy is obviously in the no pile, but like I just wanted to talk about that because people bring her up a lot, and it's like, no, you guys are not getting it. All right. After that, we have Caleb, Wittebane, and Evelyn from the Owl House. I'm just mentioning these guys quickly because the reason why they're in the maybe pile is because like while they do technically fit, they're not characters. They're plot devices. Um, like there like is no discernible character traits for either of them. We just know that, like they're like in the past or whatever, like Lord Bellows killed Caleb and Evelyn because Caleb was fell in love with Evelyn and like what was it like what do they call it in show? It's like monster phobia or something like that. Or it's like it's like a racism allegory. Um, but like that's why. So like technically they are a yes, but because they aren't actual characters, then like they're literally just plot devices for like the Lord Bellows plot. And so they are technically in the yes pile, but like barely. That's why I put them in the maybe one. Next one we have Nell Crane from The Haunting of Hill House. Um, I had this spoiled for me, so I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it again. But so this one follows, I think someone said it follows two timelines. I looked this up so I could know what it was. But like the bent neck lady that follows Nell Crane as a kid is Nell from the future after she dies. Um, so like that's why people say this. So I do want to say like that it follows a similar Yellow Jackets thing, but I want to say it's no because we do follow Nell Crane is the main character. The bent neck lady, I guess you like could say actually no, you couldn't because she's still on like I think we see her enough times that like it doesn't count. So yeah, no, it's a no. But like it's a decent enough like you could maybe like make a convincing case for yes. But because Nell is like the main character we're following, then it doesn't really make sense. Um, Next up, Talia Grace from the Rick Rayorn universe. This one's, I'm just going to say it flat out, it's a no. But the reason why it's in the maybe pile is because she dies, not dies, but she gets turned into the tree at the beginning. And we don't, like, we hear her mentioned a little bit in the the Lightning Thief, and she's mentioned in the Sea of Monsters. She's actually the whole reason that plot happens. And then she, like, gets revived at the end and then she's like a deep main character of the Titan's Curse. She's I think mentioned in the Battle of the Labyrinth, and then in the last book she shows up for the Battle of Manhattan. So And then she shows up a couple different times in the other books, like as a minor character. But so yeah, so she doesn't count, but I did want to talk about that a little bit because like if she had simply remained a tree, then yeah, she would count. And it would be interesting. But because and I think there is actually a prequel bit, a prequel book where we follow Luke, Talia, and Annabeth as they go like travel to Camp Half Blood. Luke is another one that people say haunts the narrative, but it's like no, he doesn't because he's like the main character or like the main villain for the first series. You know, like yeah, he does definitely some lasting impact, but like that doesn't count. And then finally, we have Jason Todd from the DCU comics. Like I said already that like DCEU characters and MCU characters couldn't be like hunting the narrative. Jason Todd's a different case for this point. Um, because Jason Todd is the one that gets beaten to death, the Robin that gets beaten to death with the crowbar by Joker. And his death kind of serves as a cautionary tale for like every future Robin. And the way comics work is that unless like you're reading like a specific series, I think there isn't really like a narrative like for like a narrative through line typically. It's like more just like it's not serialized, it's episodic because that's how you sell comics is you make more and more stories. Um so I'm gonna keep him in the maybe pile with Rose Tyler because it's like I don't know enough about this. I just know like what happens to him and I know like his effect on the story. But yeah. So because he's like not a character that gets featured enough, or like he does get featured like for however long and he gets beaten to death brutally and it's like fucking terrifying and everything. So that's why he's in like the maybe pile. That's why he's gonna stay there because frankly I don't want to make a decision on him. It feels wrong to talk about him like this because, well, that like people voted for him to die like that. Did you know that? Like that's crazy. All right. Finally, I just want to talk about why does TikTok and social media in general have this like relationship with like literary theory, literary criticism, and like tropes the way it does. Um, So like TikTok and people have already made topic like video essays about like book talk and kind of the effect that they have on like the way like people read things. Um, People talk about like how books nowadays are not like advertised with plots or like with genres. They're advertised with tropes that appear. And the thing with tropes is that they're not they're marketing tools now, but like literary wise, they're not actually like that important. You can't like yeah, they're important for your story maybe, but like if you're trying to like write a story that includes a certain trope, you're already failing from the beginning because you're missing the point. Um Tropes just describe what happens in your story and it's not even like it doesn't describe it if it's done well or not. Tropes are simply tools and like execution is what matters. But so people advertise books based on tropes and everything, and so you get this like constant feedback loop of like, oh, it has this like trope in it. I think you'd like it. It's like, okay, well, how well is it done? It's like, oh, what do you mean? It just has the trope. Don't you like this one? And it's like, okay, well, no, I like how it's done typically. Um, and like nowadays, books are also like they're published with aesthetic ideas and like constant like story labels like oh office romance, dark romance, that type of thing. And there's this whole thing about like are people on book talk are we all reading the same books? Because we see like constantly it's like oh like these are the ones that everyone talks about. Um and people have like already done deep dives on that. I don't need to do that. But yeah, no people like on TikTok like to kind of force things into aesthetics and boxes. Like there's like no matter what style you have, people like will come up with a term for it and like gets popularized depending like eclectic grandpa from a while ago. Dark academia kind of got this treatment a little bit on both Tumblr and TikTok. And it just kind of happens like that a lot. It's not a new phenomenon. We see it happen all the time. It's like things with like Sheen and Temu and like Amazon storefronts and everything. Influencers will try to sell things based on like what aesthetic niche they fill. Um, the like, but like at a deeper level, not so I think the reason why people say like their favorite character fits the definition of like haunting the narrative, and they call it a trope. Um, because I think the reason why is because as like a platform, like social media and TikTok are kind of like they have an individualism thing. We saw this with Zapotha, which if you don't remember what Zapotha was, back in summer of 2023, this one artist, Jeffries, I think was their name or something. They wanted to promote their album, their upcoming album. It was like synth horror pop music. I don't remember exactly. It doesn't really matter. Um, but so they posted a TikTok. They're like, what if we all use this sound and we like made up a fake horror movie called Zapotha? And they're like, we'll watch new characters and plot lines and everything like form. And so this was very clearly forced marketing by this user to advertise their music. And it caught on pretty quickly. It was like one people like we were trying to do, they were like, oh, like let's go into the comments of people like we see trying on clothes or whatever. And it's like, let's just say like you look like this character from Zapotha. And it's like, okay, that's sort of fun, but now you're just bugging people. And I will admit, I was a part of the Zapotha movement. Um, why do I say movement? The Zapotha trend. It was summer. I was bored. What are you gonna do? Um, and there was like this constant kind of like comparison to Goncharov, which it was kind of in like clear that the person who started it kind of got inspiration from. Goncharov on Tumblr was this like Tumblr and TikTok do have a different culture from each other, but they were like, oh, like let's do like this for this like fake mafia movie that was like on the tag of a shoe that I bought. Um, and like Tumblr very much has a yes and culture. It's a lot easier to keep track of things on Tumblr because you don't have to worry about people like constantly getting your story wrong. Because if you scroll up in the reblog thread, you'll just see where everything started from. And you can like add on to that already. And it's a lot more collaborative than TikTok, which TikTok is more spread out. TikTok is more vast and like has more to do. Um, and so like you can try and keep everyone like all connected, but like you'll still have people trying to force their own ideas into it. And even if it doesn't work with like the thing with a bit is that it has to be like coherent, like it has to be cohesive, and you guys aren't doing that. You guys are doing it wrong. And like, yeah, it could be annoying when I was like, you guys are like, what character is this you're talking about? Like, this wasn't one of the characters in the movie. I think that's your OC you like came up with when you were seven. Because like it was set in the 80s. So it was like you had to like kind of bully, like gaslight people into thinking it was like a videotape or something. And like they saw it when they were a kid or whatever. And it was like at any given time, there was like 100 different characters that were floating around, and really only seven max of them were like cohesive with each other. Like everyone agreed on, I think Elaine was the main character, and like Max was her friend or whatever, and there was like a couple other ones that people agreed on, and that was it. Like that was all we had, and yeah, it just wasn't cohesive or anything. And so like you try to like rein everyone in, they like fight you on it. They're like, well, why can't we just have fun? Let people have fun attitude. It's like I get it, like I get why you guys want to have fun, but like you guys are like doing the thing wrong. And it's like it's anti-intellectualism also because like people respond with any criticism of the thing that they like to with the let's let people enjoy things. It's like no, you guys need to like also like enjoy critical thinking, you know? Like this is a literary theory that you guys are taking and you guys are trying to like force your things into it that you like personally. And it's just like you guys need to stop. Like I get why you want your favorite thing to be a part of this like new hot topic, but it just isn't, and that's okay. You guys can just have your like you can like your things that they don't have to fit into this like new hot thing that everyone's talking about. Like some of these ones that we were talking about, like on the no side, it was like, oh well, like I like this character, or like it's like I think you guys just like tragic characters who die, or like characters that are like sort of doomed by the narrative, like Jackie Taylor, like Rue or Finnick or Prim or any of those ones on the Hunger Games, or like any of like the other characters from Yellow Jackets that die that we all know die. And it's like I think you guys just like characters that are doomed by the narrative, or like are not even like necessarily that, or like they're just tragic who die like tragically. And it's like if you like that, that's fine. That's fine to like things like that, because guess what? I like them too, but I'm not going to try and say that like these things fit into this like actual literary theory. You know? Like I can like you don't need to you can like something and it doesn't have to fit into like the hot topic of the day, right? Okay, like it doesn't need to, and it's fine. You guys can just like your things. Like if you like Tate Langdon, that's fine. Like a lot of people like Tate Langdon, but he doesn't haunt the narrative because that's just not what that word means. You know? Like terms mean things, and I need you guys to understand that, and it's fine. Like you guys can engage with literary theory properly and still enjoy your things. That's kind of like the overall thesis of the video. It's just like you guys can engage with literary theory in like the proper way, and you can still enjoy your things because like that's totally cool. You know, it's anti-intellectualism is already such a big problem that we're dealing with, of like people like the let people enjoy things crowd, and like you have the people who are like this like modern art sucks or whatever, and it's like okay, well you just don't understand what you're looking at, you're not engaging with it critically, you're just seeing like the thing that you don't like, you can't attach any like imagery value. Like you point at like classical things, you're like, that looks cool, so it means it's automatically better. It's like, okay, well, this like banana taped to a wall is actually like a really funny piece of art if you want to like engage with the themes it's engaging with. And they're like, no, it's not art because it's sold for like it's a lot of money for a banana duct taped to a wall. It took no effort. And it's like, are you like are you sure like the concept that's behind that piece didn't take a lot of effort to come up with? You know, it's like Um, and yeah, it's just like kind of a branch off point. It's like you guys can interact with these concepts and like these intellectual pursuits or whatever, and you can do that and still enjoy things. Like a lot of the reason why people like enjoy like literary criticism and like art criticism is because it's fun. Because it's fun to like look at something and like think deeply about it. Like, but so yeah, just like kind of a little bit of inclusion. This is not going to be like a super like regular thing that I do. I'm not gonna like I'm not a video essay creator. I just had an itch I wanted to scratch. Um, and my delivery is not super great yet, and I'm not very eloquent and I stutter a lot. But I had fun with this, talking for like an hour or so. I don't know how long it's been. Um, but yeah, so I'm Casey of Casing the Joint, and I will talk to, or we'll see each other again, probably, maybe. Who knows? I have another video essay ideas I want to do, but whenever that happens, it happens. But bye.